Let's welcome to the stage Gibbson Biddle, former VP of Product of Netflix, Chief Product Officer of Chegg. Thank you.
I now know how to test a mic. Corn dog. Corn dog, is this thing working? How about a yow? How many of you are Netflix members? Cool. I'll do a little research now. I want you to think about your experience with Netflix and the likelihood that you'll recommend it to a friend. So this is an NPS survey. So how many of you are stoked and would give it a 9 or a 10? Good. Record that. And how many would give it a 7 or an 8? Good. And then how many would give it a 0 to 6? All right. You're my wonderfully unsatisfied customer. That's Greg, right? What do you wish was better about Netflix? Yeah. Hey, and I've now had the time to calculate the NPS for Netflix. But Greg, tell me what could make it better. He just doesn't like what's on there. And this is the wonderful thing about customer obsession, and this is why I'm interested in it. Chasing after how to delight Greg is this mix of art and science, and it's hard. So I'm going to tell you, and nothing like a billionaire quote to build credibility. So my desire to delight Greg will drive me to invent on your behalf. Okay, and this is the reason I got into customer obsession. I'm always helping. I started with startup, a proof of concept. I help it to scale, and I'm always looking for those true norths. And mission, and vision, and culture, and strategy are cool. But if everyone in an organization is thinking this way, and trying to delight the inherently unsatisfied customer, it drives you all in the same direction. And that's why I got interested in this. A little of my story, I joined Electronic Arts building Bang Bang Shoot 'em Up games in 1991. I read every letter from every customer. I was trained on how to compete. I had a picture of the product manager I was competing with at a different company on my desk. And I didn't find this particularly helpful. And then my first hit product, I built Sesame Street Elmo's Preschool. It was the year that Oprah Winfrey threw Tickle Me Elmo's into the crowd, and that was good luck. But I learned about how to satisfy moms and dads and 2 and 3 and 4-year-olds. Anybody recognize this dude? So I made Madeline software, Schoolhouse Rock, Arthurman, Pokemon software, and that company was called Creative Wonders, and sold it to Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, and that was the learning company, and then helped that company to grow. And we sold it to Mattel for $3.5 billion. And then I went on to my next startup, so did he. And 2 years later, they tossed the whole software business out of Mattel, and its valuation was now $350 million. So in the long term, we had not succeeded. We had failed to build a hard-to-copy, durable business. And in 2005, I met this guy. This is Reed Hastings. You may not remember this, but Netflix got big on DVD by mail. So we were way into DVDs, and he asked me 2 questions in the interview. I did get the job. But the first one is, Gib, can you delight customers? And I said, Reed, I built almost preschool. And luckily, his kids had loved it. Okay? And then the second question he asked me was, Gib, do you believe in consumer science? And luckily, I knew what he meant. In asking him what he wanted his legacy to be, he had said, consumer science. He said, Steve Jobs is sort of this magical arbiter of style and can guess and invent the future. And I'm a geeky engineer, and I really don't know what works. But if we can invent a system where we can test everything to discover what will delight folks or not, that is the way to building a big company, a big brand, and a world-class product. So I'm going to take you on 2 journeys today. This is a startup trick. Always show what your company looked like at the beginning before you showed up. And this is Netflix in 1999, and it sucked, okay? And last night, when I did a screen capture, this is what my experience looked like last night. It's this wonderfully simple, highly personalized choice. You get a sense of my movie taste as well. The other part of this journey, I had learned about customer focus, the importance of satisfying customers, of listening carefully, and of competing. And it was good, but it wasn't great. And later in my career, I learned about the power of customer obsession. This idea of delighting folks, of experimenting your way towards inventing the future that's wonderfully hard to copy and where you don't have competitors. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. While I was on the top of a mountain at Dyson National Park backpacking with my family, Dave sent me a list of questions that he thought you would have. And I will answer these questions. And in reflecting and talking and listening with you over the last couple of days, for you, it's about how to work effectively with your product leader, your product partner. And what I want to do today is, this is going to be frightening. I'm going to try to take you inside of my head and how I think about product. I'm going to take you inside Netflix and sort of give you the inside scoop. And then at the end of my talk, I'm going to bring you inside the room for one of these wicked hard decisions, and we'll talk about it. I have one hot tip for you. If somebody comes to me with an idea and they begin with 2 words, I am immediately drawn to whatever they say. They say, Gib, my hypothesis is. So Greg or others might have a hypothesis about what would make Netflix better, and it's usually more original content that I love, damn it. But when they say my hypothesis, and they have some data from consumer research or survey or existing data or A/B tests, I'm naturally open to them, and they're partnering with me in inventing the future. All right, so the 3 chapters. I'm going to explain I call it the Dhm Model. I'm going to talk about consumer science in one very specific area of Netflix and how personalization happened, this invention process. And then Netflix needs your help today. It's got an important question. Today, a person comes to the new member site, they give Netflix their credit card, and at the end of a month, the free trial ends. But Netflix, the question they have is, should they send a free trial reminder at the end of the month letting you know via text, via email, through a personalized notice on the site that your free trial is about to end? And that's the case that we're going to do. All right, brief history. Startup, Mark Randolph sent an audio CD to himself in the mail, and it showed up and it wasn't broken. Like, oh, we can send DVDs in the mail. This is when it was born. 2000, it's unlimited DVDs. We launched what we called Watch Instantly in January of 2007 with 300 really stinky titles, because that's what we could get. We launched into Canada, first international expansion. The first time it was a streaming-only service. The big bet on original content, which we had tested back in 2007 and failed, now succeeded in 2013 when the company was big enough to have an economy of scale. 190 countries. Today, Netflix knows the movie tastes of 130 million people worldwide, which is a huge advantage. It's now worth 150 billion. Now, I've noticed that there's a lot of CSMs in the room. I ask them their job. It takes a while to explain, okay? I've been a product manager for the last 20 years. That term has existed for 50 years, and it's just as amorphous, okay? And the way that I define the job is, my job is simply to delight customers in hard-to-copy, margin-enhancing ways. And this is the way I think, and this is the job that I try to do in every startup that I've worked with. So I'm going to tear that model up a little bit. So the first about it is the balance between delight and margin. Now, I know how to delight even Greg. Greg, you get all the movies. It's totally free. There's no advertising, no gotchas. And would you feel better about that service, Greg? He is tough. The insatiable, right? So the trick is, you can delight them with free, but you need to deliver a business so that you can reinvest in the future to keep making your product better and better. So I'm just going to share how that balancing act works out. An idea. It comes from customer service. They say, hey, Gib, we're getting a lot of complaints. This is in the DVD era. Customers want to get their new release DVDs sooner. Now, back then, I don't know if you remember this, but a movie would come out in a theater, and 2 months later, it was available on DVD. And those DVDs, those new release DVDs, cost us $3, as opposed to an old title. Anything over a year was only $1. So it's really expensive to get your hands on a lot of new release DVDs. And a couple of months later, not as many people want them. So through focus groups, through qual, through survey, everybody's saying the same thing. We want faster access to new release DVDs. So we tested it. We're 1 million customers back then, and we put 10,000 customers in a test cell. If they add a new release DVD like Batman to their queue, it'll show up the next day in the mail. And the question to ask, that perfect new release experience for those 10,000 customers, did that delight them a little bit more? And the way we measured delight was retention. So in the old days of Netflix, 10% of customers would cancel every month. It's the flip of retention. Today, about 2% cancel. Okay? So it's substantially better. And why do they cancel? Because there's no money in their account, and it's summer, and maybe they shouldn't be binge watching. Okay? So that's the metric. So how many of you believe that the folks in this perfect new release experience retained a little bit better? How many of you have arms? Good. Okay, how many believe that this is going to be measurably better, the perfect new release experience? And how many believe people will not notice? Good, it's about 2/3, 1/3. It turns out there is a very slight and surprisingly small measurable difference. Okay? So if we rolled this service out to everybody at that time, we would have saved about 5,000 customers. That's what the math says. And we would do the calculation. What's it worth to save 5,000 customers? And here's how it worked. We said it was worth $1 million. And our calculation was we saved the 5,000, and the lifetime value of a customer back then was $100, and we doubled it. And the reason that we doubled it was that one person might be delighted about the service and tell a friend and bring them into the service as well. We were essentially structuring into the company a concept of doubling down on delight. That's the way it worked. However, the incremental cost of getting those new releases was $5 million. So the question I'll put to you was, should we launch this test to all or not? How many believe we should launch this to everybody? I'm going to remember you. And how many say, let's not do it? And we chose not to do it. But I noticed a couple of naysayers. Do you want to articulate why you wanted to go ahead with it, even though it looks like we're losing money? Yeah, well, yes. And we had, in this case, 95% confidence of this result. Greg, do you have a theory of why this might be a good idea? Okay, so there's a number of reasons we could dispute the result. Now, I will tell you why Amazon people would do this. Do you know why Amazon people would do this? Great, and some other ways of articulating. Amazon would have done this. They said your 2x factor is way too low. At Amazon, they'll go up to 8x. That a person raving about the service will bring in 8 times as many people. Now, we were just a punk startup and we didn't have the cash, okay? So we chose not to do it. But I wanted to share how we thought about the balancing act of delight and margin. So this other concept is hard to copy. HB Mock is the product manager for the new member site. The job is to get people to click on the red button, and this was a big winner. Happy Family on Couch brought more people into free trial. And he moved a lot of the metrics, and I was delighted for him. And I said, except, HB, it's not hard to copy. And I'm guessing within a month, those bastards at Blockbuster are going to copy it. And that's what Blockbuster did. Happy Family on the Couch. So I give super bonus points to my product leaders if they can delight customers in these hard to copy ways. And in the work that I do, and frankly, it is the same for you, think for a moment about what is hard to copy about Netflix. While your startup idea is not to chase after Netflix today. And there's really sort of 5 main things that I tend to focus on. So the brand is a big deal. Like, do you trust Netflix with your credit card? I hope you do. There's a huge network effect. Today, every TV manufacturer in the world is ready to stream Netflix live. huge device ecosystem, every Samsung device, every mobile phone. There's some unique technology, I'll make the case for a moment, in personalization. Huge economy of scale. Netflix can afford $500 million to build Orange is the New Black. And Amazon can only make an investment of 200 and Hulu 100 because Netflix is serving today 130 million. Switching costs, that's a big deal in your business. And in this one, we have 4 sub-accounts at Netflix. It's just a slight hassle for me to switch everybody over to Amazon. So these are the things that I focus on to build hard-to-copy things. Now, for me, product strategy is just a series of hypotheses. In trying to answer the question, in the long term, what will do the combination of things that delight customers in hard-to-copy, margin-enhancing ways? And these were all tested product strategies over the years. And I want you to think, what percentage of time did Netflix get it right? And the answer is about half the time, or only half the time. This is frickin' hard. So the things on the top all worked. You see Friends down at the bottom? A social strategy. If you were in Silicon Valley in 2007, every frickin' VC is asking you, what's your social strategy? Because of this thing called Facebook. And the theory was that if we could connect everybody in a network of friends on Netflix, you'd give great movie ideas to each other, and you wouldn't want to leave your friends. And there's 2 things wrong with this theory that we found out through multiple research techniques. Your friends have bad movie tastes. Okay? And the second is you don't really want to tell your friends everything that you're watching. Okay? So welcome to 3 years of my life disproving a hypothesis. And the other thing that so here's the real secret to success at Netflix. It's essentially high cadence failure. So this willingness to experiment again and again and again. All right. And then this is really at a high level, this is the overall company strategy. We were going to get big on DVD. We were going to lead streaming. The word streaming didn't exist, so we said lead downloading at the time. We were going to expand worldwide when we didn't have to do the darn DVD by mail system. And then develop original content. This is the playbook. And it worked out largely. And this is sort of thinking about a company in the long term in chapters of its life, in 5-year chunks. Now, I'm lying a little. We tested the original content theory in 2007. It failed. It was only in the last 5 years that Netflix had the insight that the next chapter of its life was all around original content. All right. And really what we were trying to do was get this virtuous cycle going. The more customers that we had, the more the device manufacturers would sign up with us, and the more content we could afford. And now it's really simple. The more content that Netflix has, the more customers has, the more it can afford to get more content. It's this wonderful, hard-to-copy, virtuous cycle. So when I'm working with different product leaders, I just nicely ask the product strategy. Here is the strategy that worked. And then the other thing I looked for, I am a very metrics-driven person. I look for a way of measuring whether the company's making progress against those strategies. And so I'm sharing with you today a variety of metrics, and I'll talk a little bit more about a few of them. But the important thing is there's a way to measure whether or not you're making progress against that strategy or not. And then for me, the projects are just tactics. There's a series of projects against a product strategy on the left to see if those things work. And many of these projects, these high-level hypotheses, personalization was like a 10-year leap of faith. It was only to about 8 years into it that we actually proved that it improved retention. And we just keep pounding away at it. All right, so now I'm going to talk about consumer science within the realm of personalization. Fancy word, hypothesis, test it, have the data. And the thing that I love is human judgment is still required when you're looking at these A/B test results. So I'm still somewhat needed in this world. You'll see in the personalization journey, we were always relying on 4 sources of consumer insight. So my first day at Netflix, I was shared the eStaff metrics, about 50 different metrics that helped me to understand both customer and business behavior. Every week, I would meet with customers outside Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley has got Silicon Valley freaks, and they are not normal people. So I have been to Minnesota, I've been to Rhode Island, I've been all over the country. Surveys, I gave you an example already, and then the big dog is A/B tests. So there's a concept of the fog of war. Personalization at Netflix, it looks easy. It should look easy to use. You should be able to guess what's right and wrong in picking what will resonate with customers, except it's really hard. So I'm going to show you some of the questions that we had along the way. And just to nicely point out how hard it is when you are in process of figuring this stuff out, I'm pretty sure that you'll struggle. So I have a series of pop quizzes for you. So this is what Netflix looked like in 2005. There's nothing personalized about it except for the one tab that says recommendations. And I have a hint in personalization. Do not use the word recommendation, okay? Like you're working with humans, you would never recommend someone go out on a date with someone that you know, okay? You might say, I suggest, I think you'll like this person, etc. So in fact, that was bad. We had a strategy, and the strategy was to get explicit data from you to understand what you felt about different movies with a star rating system. We would also watch in a streaming area, observe what you watched or didn't. And then the idea was to get to know the movies and get to know you and magically connect them through these algorithms, many algorithms. We have one other theory, which is over time, if the quality of movies get better and better and better, the movies that you watch, retention will improve. And then, of course, we had ways, we had projects against all of these things, a series of experiments, projects, and then, of course, we had metrics for all of these ideas. So this metric, it's an odd one. Think about this for a minute. The percentage of members who rate at least 50 movies, 50, in their first 6 weeks of the service. That was our proxy metric for trying to understand if there was value in personalization for you. And our theory was if you put effort into giving us this data, it must be because you valued the output. This was a proxy metric about was personalization a good idea? And that brings me to pop quiz number 1. I want you to think. Would provide at least 50 ratings in their first 6 weeks with the service. I got a 10 here, I got a 10 there. This is when I learned the skeptics, the curmudgeons, and the youthful optimists in the room. A couple other numbers. Do I have an enthusiast out there? A 40% enthusiast. What was the number there? A 1. I've got my cynic. Okay, this is the range. And I want you to observe one little thing on this site. It's now got a movies you'll heart instead of recommendations. And the designers described that as fugly, which I think is a combination of funky and ugly, but there might be a designer in the room that can help me. So the answer, we got it up close to 30%. So people were willing to give us this data, and the main invention was something that we called the ratings wizard. People were attracted to that movies you'll heart, and then our job was to surface up all the movies that we thought you might have watched, and people would go on ratings jags. Okay? And this is the major tactic that we got for understanding people's movie tastes in the early days. This is my family. My wife is 55. My daughter is 22. That's Brittany. She's 20. And the awkward guy on the right, 56. And here's the question. Will it help inform Netflix algorithms to know the age and gender of its members? Okay, how many believe, yes, it is helpful data? And how many believe, no, it is not helpful data? Sam, what is your hypothesis? Okay, his hypothesis, it has no influence. And can you give me insight as to why it's not helpful to know that I'm an awkwardly 56-year-old male? Why is that not helpful? His movie tastes are wonderfully unique, and it's not helpful to know that I'm male and 56. What was your hypothesis? You believe that this is important data. So he believes that there is a set of common characteristics in movie tastes at different experience in different lives. So I suppose you want to know the answer. So the first question was, could we get the data? And it turned out to be wonderfully easy. About 90% of our customers gave with that incredibly wonky looking design, okay? Really simple to get. And then the answer is no. It did not help predict movies' taste. It's more helpful to know that you love what movie? He loves Avengers, okay? And I'm sure there's a 56-year-old out there that loves Avengers as well, okay? And here, I'll share the metric for how we did this. This is our MSE, but this is one of those things where, tell me some movies you love. TV shows too. Catch Me If You Can. House of Cards. Loves those two. And then, what's your name? Ellie. Ellie loves those two movies too, okay? And tell me another movie you like. Godfather. And because she likes Godfather 2, you'll like Godfather 2. And this is how collaborative filtering works. And then the question is, we thought you'd like those movies 4 and 5, and you did. We were perfect. We thought you'd like Godfather 2, 5, and you did. 5. We were perfect. So if you can get this metric all the way down and to the right, it means your algorithm's perfect at guessing your movie tastes. And in this case, we added the demographic data. It did not improve RMSE at all. And it turns out that the big dog for many years was collaborative filtering. And I just explained how collaborative filtering works en masse. And the one thing about collaborative filtering is it gives you absolutely no insight as to why you will like a movie. You know, what is held in common with the two movies you like and Godfather 2? Not that much. And then we would do some incredibly weird things, like because you like Star Trek and Star Wars, we think you'll like Sesame Street. And customers are like, what? And we're like, well, that's what the data says, okay? And so this is how collaborative filtering worked. And it was a wonderful thing, and we only had one problem. We had 2 engineers working on our collaborative filtering algorithm. So we outsourced it. How many people have ever heard of the Netflix prize? So the idea was we would give $1 million to any engineer or team of engineer outside the building who could improve our collaborative filtering algorithm by at least 10%, improve RMSE by 10%. And this is the leaderboard. And if you look, every year we gave a progress prize and at a specific moment in time. And there's some insight just looking carefully at the names of these teams. Because what would happen is if you were in 2nd or 3rd place, you knew you weren't going to win, you would combine the algorithms of your 2 teams together and you'd bump to the top, which is why we have some incredibly wonky names like Opera Solutions and Vandalay United. Okay, are there any Seinfeld fans out there? But that gave us this insight that the more algorithms that you combine together, the better. And this helped move things forward. Now, we tested the algorithm. Did it improve retention? How many people believe, yes, an algorithm that performs 10% better will improve retention? And how many believe, no, it won't? This is a hard one. Turned out it didn't, but we did pay the $1 million, okay? It's all good. Turns out it's not, most of our wins were both presentation layer, things that customers could see, plus the work of bright engineers. But we knew more algorithms were better, and our dear friends at Pandora were doing something called the Movie Genome Project, and they had 40 movicologists tagging every attribute of different songs. Jack Johnson, surfer dude music, low key, acoustic, low tempo that 56-year-old males will like. That is true. And so what we did the same experiment. It was a great job. You could be a moviecologist, watch a lot of movies, and tag movies. And for the first time, we did neat stuff like, hey, Gib, because you like Airplane, we think you'll like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is in a category of cult movies from the 1980s. For the first time, we could give context. And this is one of the things that actually helped improve retention. Crystal Chancuti, her job was to make it wicked easy, I come from Boston, to add DVDs to your queue. And you can see she's moving her metric the number of customers that add at least 6 DVDs a month to their queue, up and to the right, and something bad happened in 2009. What was that? Yeah, we started streaming because Brent Airy's job was to nicely encourage members to watch at least 15 minutes in a month. And that's up and to the right. And wonderful things started happening. We became a streaming company at around 2010. And how important is explicit data versus implicit data? From a personalization point of view, we know what you watch 10 minutes of and quit. It was really exciting data, where before we didn't know that with DVD. And because we were an international streaming company, we started learning and thinking about the tastes of people worldwide. And this is pop quiz number 3. Is it helpful for the algorithm to know that you're French, that you live in France? That's the question. How many believe it's helpful for the algorithm to know this? And how many people believe it's not helpful? What's your hypothesis? Well, what did I tell you last night? Okay, good. So your hypothesis is? So there are some universal movie tastes, and Hollywood is good at this, blockbusters. But it does turn out that our tastes are wonderfully unique. And what was your theory? I saw that you said it wouldn't help. It was you. What was your theory? Okay. Well, the answer to this one is no. Okay? That's the best French I could muster. Now something wild goes on. You're an international company. There's this company called Facebook. They've perpetuated this thumbs up and thumbs down. It's fundamentally easier than 5 stars. So Netflix tested it. And it got twice as many ratings, just because the gesture is so much simpler than parsing. Is it 3? Is it 4? Is it 5? And everyone worldwide understood the thumbs up and thumbs down. So now Netflix has a problem. Like, they've got this star system. What do? Well, there's another problem. Remember my 4th hypothesis? That over time, if average movie rating improved, the movies that you watched were better, you were retained better. But there was a little problem. There was no evidence of this, which was a really hard problem for us. So we spent lots of time and energy and lots of time talking to customer and qualitative settings. And we started to notice something. That movie enjoyment is not the same as a movie rating, and I'll explain it. Have you watched a good movie lately? Yeah, I loved Hotel Rwanda and Schindler's List. Those are the kinds of movies that I like to talk about with people in public, and I rated them 5. Now, what they don't tell you is they had a lot of enjoyment watching a Leave Your Brains at the Door comedy called Paul Blart Mall Cop, okay? And they gave that 3 stars. And this is why the whole theory of measuring movie enjoyment by star ratings was absolutely the wrong thing to do. So what does Netflix do? It's a very different idea. If you look carefully, you'll notice all the stars are gone. In Casino, it's basically saying, hey, Gib, we think there's a 98% chance that you'll enjoy this movie. It's a little wonky, but it's trying to get the titles up in front and center of you that you think will enjoy, independent of a star rating. And it's a big shift in thinking that's come up through consumer science in the personalization area. So the pop quiz number 4, personalization is an important thing. And here's the question. We've all been trained that a consistent, simple design experience is better. But we've learned that personalizing is good. So the weird question is, what if every time you visited the site, the design was different? There were different rows showing in different places, different tabs. Every time you visit, or if different people in your family had fundamentally different site structure. So you'll notice at the bottom, in this instant, there's a row called My List. But it could have popped in popular on Netflix or trending now or continue. And each time I come back, there could be a different fundamental row structure. So how many people believe that it's okay to be wonderfully consistent, but to be highly personalized. And this highly personalized site design and structure will improve retention. By the way, this is a really hard question. How many people believe that this might improve retention? Do you have a theory about why it will work? Faster. Make it faster and easier to find the stuff that I want to watch. Great theory. Another theory? He might log in more often to see what's up next time. Well, the answer to this question is yes. This wonderfully personalized and wonderfully inconsistent experience makes it faster and easier for people to find movies that they love, and that, in fact, improves retention. This was like heresy to designers in the building. And it's the only kind of thing that you can learn through this consumer science process. So I've taken you on the journey of personalization. Back in the old days, the job of personalization was to help you to find among 100,000 choices the movies that you would love. And then when we launched streaming in 2007, the job was to find among the 300 stinky choices a movie or two that you'd love. And today, personalization is amazing. They are essentially making investment decisions about whether to spend $500 million in Stranger Things, knowing that 100 million people will watch it worldwide, and only 10 million in BoJack Horseman. Anybody watch that with me, BoJack? There you go. They've got the right size, whereas how many folks have watched Stranger Things? So they're right-sizing the investment based on all this personal data. It's incredibly powerful, good for the business, and wicked hard to copy. All right, so I told you that Netflix needs your help. At the end of that free trial reminder, you already have their credit card. Should you let them know that your free trial is up? Should you send them an email? Should you text them? Do whatever is possible just to nicely let them know. And that is the question. And this came up via, I call it there were $10 million of phone calls, people calling in and saying, hey, I missed it. I meant to cancel, but I didn't. And the agent would back them out. And then we also knew that this cancel anytime, there are actually fence sitters out there, people who have not tried Netflix, and just saying, hey, try it and you can cancel anytime. Very powerful claim. And we're like, well, how far should we take it? And I just want to give you two pieces of existing data. The first is trials over visit conversion. Does anybody want to guess what percentage of time 100 people come to that site and what percent actually give credit card and engage in a free trial? It's going to be a number between 0 and 100. What was your number? 85. Okay, I'm going to come back to you later because I love you because you're a youthful optimist. And a curmudgeon skeptic? Okay, I got some 12s. What other? Okay, well, this is a little scary. The number is 2. Okay? So and they come back again and again. They think about it. But giving up credit card is hard. Okay, my friend, number 85. The other question is, what percent at the end of a free trial retain? What's your guess, Mr. 85? He's gone south on me this time. The answer is an astounding 90%. 90% of the customers love this experience enough to engage in the paid service. Okay, do you guys have a gut instinct? I just want to get your sort of provisional thinking on what the right thing to do here is. How many would send this aggressive free trial reminder? Good. And how many would not? Cool. Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit more data. Do you think this will change customer behavior? Give me a little yowl if you think it is. It will. Okay. Well, it does. Month 1 retention drops from 90% down to 85%. So that's some new information, some new data. So now we're going to apply the delight customers in hard to copy, margin enhancing ways. We already know what's going to happen to margin. If I do the math for you, CFOs in the room, we're going to lose 80 million bucks doing this. But we can back out the 10 million in customer support costs. So that's 70 million. We're going to lose 70 million. Is this a delightful experience for customers, this free trial reminder? How many people believe it has the potential to delight folks out there? Okay, it's very delightful to folks who got the reminder. And I want you to think for a moment how you would feel about a company that is this aggressive in letting you know that your free trial is over. Does that make you feel better about the company? Yeah. And what's the hard to copy thing at work here? Trust, trust, trust. And on my hard to copy list, what is the word? What's trust all about? I heard transparency, loyalty, and I heard the word I was fishing for, which is the brand. This is all about the brand. Who makes the decision at Netflix about whether to do this? It's the product manager. His name is Tom Willerer. And he gets to make the call. So there's a vigorous debate at something called a product strategy meeting. Yes, the CFO is there. Some folks are saying, this is the right thing to do. This is the right thing for the brand. Those people, it might be summer. They're going to come back. We can't see that. We don't know that. And others are saying, we're going to be losing $70 million. Like we could put that money somewhere else. All right. How many would nicely tell Tom Willerer to go ahead and launch this free trial reminder? How many people go for it? Okay, and how many people would say, what are you smoking? Good. Okay, so Tom listened to the debate, and he chose to do it. Is this a high stakes or a low stakes decision? It might feel hard to you. The nice thing Tom's thinking was, if he gets it wrong, he could just flip the button back. He could change it, right? And then he had an interesting conversation with the CFO. And the CFO said, Tom, just make the decision that you think is best for us and the customers. Because we're an $8 billion business, and I can handle the 8 million there. So this is not the kind of decision that we could afford back in 2005, but Netflix can afford it today. So Netflix is engaged in these kinds of decisions, these kinds of debates, and they're vigorous every day. And the key thing is, what does everybody in the room learn from it? In this case, it's the case that delight trumps margin. That Netflix has learned to double and triple down on delight in building a world-class product and a world-class brand. Now, you can't afford it in the early days. You got to do what gets you to the next stage of funding. But if you have this thinking in the back of your head, it will help you get to a fundamentally better place. And there's a real cost of ethics of doing the right thing in the brand. In this case, it was $70 million. And the other thing about the A/B testing is you can't measure everything. We could not discover what was happening to those people. Did they come back? And we couldn't discover the word of mouth effect. It might be 5x. Like you guys might all say, Netflix does this really cool thing, and they might get 100 new signups today. And the last thing that's really important, and it's part of the Netflix culture, is this culture of fierce debate. And then Tom got to decide, and then everybody magically got behind him. The debate was over, and they were instantly aligned against his decision. So there's one last thing that I find in working with startups that's required in making all of this thing work, and it usually makes them feel good. And it is patience. It takes a long time to make this stuff. So you can look at the periods where I was wondering if I could afford to send Kelsey to college and medical school or not. But over time, the company has become wonderfully valuable. So when I'm talking and looking at companies and trying to understand if they're obsessed, I'm really looking for 5 different things. I'm looking for that meaningful existing data that helps me to understand both customer and shareholder value. I'm looking for, do they have the pulse of the customer using a variety of qualitative tools? Are they surveying them? Do they have insight about why folks cancel, why they are staying? All of these things. The NPS is I find NPS is wonderfully helpful for startups, super easy to instrument, and I find a lot of meaningful data. And in the long term, it's great to be able to just embrace this let's test it model. Let's experiment. We don't know what works. We're inventing the future. We have no idea what it looks like, and let's just try it. And that's the way that you balance the delight and margin. And the last thing I look for is, do you have a strategy? Do you have well-formed hypothesis about the ideas that will delight your customers in hard-to-copy, margin-enhancing ways? For me, customer obsession is putting the customer at the center of everything you do to delight customers in hard-to-copy, margin-enhancing ways to invent a better future. In the last 10 years have been so much better than the first 10 years of my career. I've love it. So with that, I'm going to bring it home with, of course, another juicy quote from a billionaire. It must be right. But look what he says. Put the customer first, invent, and be patient. The most important thing, focus obsessively on the customer. And with that, I'd like to say thank you.
Awesome.
Now, wait a minute. I have one more wicked awkward thing to do. Have you ever seen a street performer? Everybody's there, and they put the hat out, and everybody leaves. Now, I have no hat, but I seek feedback. So I would love it if you went to www.gibsonbiddle.com, and at the very top of the page, there is a link for you to give me NPS data. 0 sucks and 10 is great, and I swear to God, it only takes like 28 seconds of your life. So if you could give me that gift, I would love it. And with that, I say thank you.